These are RV campsite setup mistakes and how to avoid them. I'm Tom with EnjoyTheJourney.Life. In this video, we're going to show you a bunch of common RV setup mistakes, all the way from mistakes that newbies make to what some of us experienced RVers still do today. How many of these have you made? Make sure you stick around till the end and you can find out how you can get a free copy of our RV setup and tear down checklists. And be sure to subscribe to our channel. That way you can see our entire series on RV mistakes. The first mistakes we're going to cover is before you leave on your trip. Number one is not doing an RV shakedown. Whether you're new to RVing or you just have a new to you camper, you need to do a shakedown. And that is taking your RV out on a trip, maybe just for a weekend, you and your spouse, maybe not taking the kids or pets and not planning a lot of fun activities to do, but just taking it out, maybe 100-mile trip away where you can get the feel of it on the road, back into a campsite and try and test out all of the appliances, the slides, go through everything, because you would be surprised how many people get their RV and race out with everything, all of their stuff, their kids, their family, guests, whatever, and expect to have an amazing time only to spend it the whole weekend or trip trying to figure out how stuff works. And if something doesn't work right, it can be a real irritation. So not doing a proper RV shakedown is a big mistake. And if you can't go out like for a short weekend, you can always do that in your driveway. You can plug your RV into your house power and you can test out a lot of different things, but we'd prefer you take it to an actual campground to try everything out. And make sure that you practice backing your RV up. You can place some cones out in a large parking lot and practice. You don't want your first time backing up to be in a campground. And the second mistake is not checking your tire pressure on all your tires and using a TPMS system. There's going to be links to all of the items that we use to our Amazon store below in the description. The next mistake is not adding holding tank treatment and water to your black tank before you leave. You need to add at least a couple gallons of water. That way it keeps your sewer tank ready to go. And the next mistake is not turning on your RV refrigerator at least 4 to 6 hours or more before you plan to load it. Actually, what we would recommend is to do it the night before, because these take a long time to cool off. So let's get it fired up. And the next mistake is leaving your propane on while you travel. This is considered a safety risk by many, so better to be safe than sorry. Turn off your propane before you leave. And the next mistake is being in too big of a hurry, even for short weekend trips. We know you want to get out there and enjoy yourself, but it's actually quite comical sometimes. Cherie and I will watch people come in for the weekend and just race, being stressed out, making mistakes because they have just short, precious few days to enjoy their weekend. But that's when mistakes happen. Slow down, don't drive too fast when you're traveling. Be especially careful and cautious and slow through the campground or RV park. And by doing that and being careful, you will ensure yourself of having a more enjoyable trip. And the next mistake is not bringing the right tools with you. Now, there's a lot of things you can bring, but I'm going to mention, I think, some of the most important ones. The first one right here is not having a 12-volt powered air compressor that's powerful enough to fill up your RV and truck tires. That is a must. Having a headlamp in case you get stuck setting up your RV at night. Not something you plan, but it's helpful to have. You want to have fuses for every fuse that you have in your RV, because nothing is worse than blowing a fuse out in the middle of nowhere and not having any store nearby for a replacement. So you want these. They're cheap when you buy them in advance, and they can be a real problem if you don't have them. You want to have these multi-tools with you that you can, use a screwdriver when you need it, a knife. You want tape, both electrical tape and duct tape. You want a combination of different screws because things fall down in RVs. And speaking of that, we've got wood glue here when you need to fix things. A basic level so you can check your level manually. Even if you have a Lippert automatic leveling system like we do on the Momentum, it's nice to pull out the level just to double check it. You also want to have a basic socket set with you. We've got various bungee cords right here. If things break or you need to just tie it down temporarily, this helps, but also rope will work. We've got a tow cable right here in case you get stuck or you need to help out a fellow camper. I also have a large light here. Again, we don't plan on showing up at night, but just in case, you can plug this thing in and it can make it a lot easier when parking your RV. And another thing that I don't have pictured here is having a saw with you, because occasionally there are branches and things that are too low in your campsite and you might have to remove them. RVs are dangerous. Seriously, there are a lot of sharp corners and edges and things that you can scratch yourself and cut yourself on. So a basic first aid kit is a must. So make sure you have one of these. And also when you're out adventuring, having fun, it's easy to get banged up. Let's say you've arrived at your campsite. Before you race in there, stop. Big mistake right here is not scouting out your campsite first. If you have a big rig like we do, you definitely want to scout out the pathway to your campsite. It may be quite a ways from the entrance. If you don't have a spare car, you may want to disconnect and drive your truck through, bike it, whatever it looks like, because there could be sharp turns or things in the way. It is a lot better than getting into a sketchy situation that's hard to get out of. You also want to check for other RVs that might be in the way. Some people at their campsite will park their truck or extra vehicle kind of hanging out in the road. Stuff like that, you might need to check with the camp host to say, hey, can stuff be moved out of the way? Again, before you get yourself in there and you block the whole thing and have to wait. When you get to your campsite, make a plan of attack. Look at the different ways that you could pull in or back into it. Sometimes the most obvious way isn't the best way. You may want to even come in going the wrong way, possibly. Just look at it, because it can be a hard back in, made a lot easier if you just kind of strategize it first. When you're at the campsite, scout out all of the hookups. Where is the water? Where is the sewer? Where is the electrical? Bring your surge protector with you. You want to check that the power is correct. Plug it in, turn it on, make sure it looks good. How far away is everything? Turn on the water, make sure the water is actually working. There are many people that have taken their RV in, set it up, and then find out the power is wrong or the water doesn't work and have to pack up and move to another site. So make sure you check the location of all of those things before you move your RV in. Also note the locations of trees that might be in the way. Are there any deep holes or uneven ground? Maybe a certain area of the campsite you definitely don't want to park in. And if any of the parts of the campsite that you are really wrong and they just don't look good, you can always check with campground management or the camp host to see if they can get you into another site. If it's a busy weekend or a busy time of the year, that may not happen, but you just never know, and it's worth checking. Now let's get to the campsite and talk about the RV mistakes that happen on the outside of your RV. The first one is not using walkie-talkies or your cell phone to maneuver or back into a site. Sure, you can yell, but it's a lot easier and more effective to communicate via one of these tools. And the next mistake when you're backing in or pulling into your site is getting distracted by bugs and people that want to chat. Yes, it's happened on many occasions that people want to start chatting with you even before you've even parked the camper. So whether it's friends, family, fellow campers, you've got to let them know that, hey, let me get this thing parked and set up, and then we will chat as much as you want to. Once you've got the RV pulled into position, don't disconnect yet. You want to check all the way around the RV and make sure that there's room for your slides. And these can come out a couple of feet. So make sure that the trees or bushes or whatever, that there's plenty of room for that. Even with the Lippert auto leveling system right here, I still make sure that we are in the most level area that we can get on, and I'll show you why. Even though we're on a concrete pad right here, you still want to have blocks of wood like this. It makes it really easy to bring your tires up to make them level. And we even have some long ones here that was suggested that we get to get all the tires underneath to get it as level as possible manually, and then go ahead and engage the automatic leveling system. Not being level. That's the next mistake. Even though I just described the things you can do to be level, but if you're not level, things like slides and how well your refrigerator will cool is affected by that. But it's also kind of uncomfortable to walk around when the RV is not level. Cherie says it feels like a fun house. And I'm going to mention distractions again. Don't get distracted when you're doing important steps like chocks and forgetting to chalk up your wheels before you disconnect. When it's time to turn your propane back on, you only want to turn on one of your tanks. Why? Because if you turn them all on and then you run out, you might be like, it might be at night and then you are out of heat or you don't have any propane to cook with. So turn on one at a time. That way you always have at least one spare, so you can go get your propane tank refilled as you're using off of the full one. You can also get a simple gauge like this one that we got off of Amazon that shows you how much propane you have in your tank. And we will link to that in the Amazon store as well. And the next mistake is leaving your awning out all the time, especially when you leave, because we've seen this before and it's not pretty, but the wind can wreak havoc on your awning. So by all means, take them out if you want some shade. An awning also helps to keep your RV cooler, but when you leave or at night when you go to bed, make sure you bring them in, because you never know when a storm is going to come and catch those awnings and turn them into sails. And our next mistake is not opening up the flap to your microwave right up here. We actually made that mistake recently. You got to make sure that's open when you're actually parked at your campground. The next mistake is not realizing that everything shifts when you travel in your RV. So be very careful when you open up cabinets, because stuff can fall out at you as things have shifted around. You can also use little tiny tension rods if you want to. We don't do that, but we try to remember almost every time to open these carefully. And this is a big one. Things do shift around in the refrigerator as well, so open these very carefully. You can have milk and eggs and other things come falling out of here. Same goes for the medicine cabinet. Another mistake is not realizing what happens when you change elevation while traveling. Still liquids like shampoo and soap and other things like that can be quite a surprise when you try to open them after a change in elevation or even a change in temperature. So be prepared for that, or you might have a mess on your hands. And the next mistake is leaving your vent on all night long or when you leave, and having rain come pouring in. Unless you have, what we have is like a vent cover, so it keeps it completely protected, or some kind of a sensing vent that automatically closes if it senses water. And another mistake is not realizing that you left the blind open, and even though the window is tinted, you can still see in at night. And the next mistake inside your RV, depending on what kind of stove or oven you have, is letting the pilot light go out when your propane is on and your RV filling up with propane. Not good. And the next mistake is not having the proper electrical adapters to connect to the power pedestal, whether it's 15 amp, 30 amp, or 50 amp. And knowing how that affects your RV and what appliances you can run, how many air conditioning units, because you don't want to keep tripping the circuit breakers, which can happen. So make sure you've got these along. And speaking of electrical mistakes and having enough electrical cord, even though we have a really long main 50 amp cable, we still have a 10-foot extension, and we have used this on a number of occasions, even knowing where the power is. Sometimes those hookups are a long ways away, so you need to have one of these. Welcome to the business side of the RV. It's not pretty over here, but it certainly is essential. We've got our power post right here. And the next RV mistake is not having a surge protector. This is an old one from Progressive Industries. I've had this for a long time. It's been great. I do have a new one that's coming, because this one is no longer available, but we will link to the new one that we have coming in our Amazon store. But you want to have one of these to protect your appliances, because a lot of RV parks and campgrounds can have bad power. So definitely get you one of these. It's about $100, but well worth the investment. And since we're talking about power, another big mistake is leaving the circuit breaker on when you connect your power to your RV. You definitely want to shut whatever power you're using. We got 30, 50 amp, we got your standard 15 amp right here. We're on a 50 amp. You want to shut that off, plug in your surge protector, check the power like we mentioned before, but then keep that off when you actually plug it into your RV. Once it's plugged in, then power that up. The reason is you can damage your appliances with that as well, because there's a spike when you first plug in. So make sure you start with this off. Next, we're going to talk about water, and water is an important thing. And the next mistake is not having a basic water filter like this one. These are fairly cheap, and we've got one connected right here. You can connect them in various spots. You can also, if you have room in your RV, you can have them inside. We don't actually drink the water. We actually have a Berkey inside. So, but that's the mistake. Make sure you have one of these and swap them out like every month or so. And the next mistake is not having a water pressure regulator. We have a more advanced one coming, but this is our basic one right here. It's set to a safe water pressure that will not damage any of the RV pipes inside, because some RV parks and campground have crazy powerful water pressure. If you don't use one of those, you can definitely damage your RV. Now, I know this is kind of an unusual water setup to be this low. Being we're in Florida, you would think they're trying to protect it from freezing. Normally your water doesn't look like this. But make sure you have a freshwater drinking hose like this, not a regular garden hose. Have plenty of these. Again, your water hookup may be far from your RV, so using the wrong hose would be another RV mistake. A couple other things you might want to have is to have a Y and a sprayer, so you can clean up after yourself. If you've been out on the beach or out hiking, you want to wash off some of the mud or whatever. So having a Y and a sprayer as well, and again, lots of extra hose. And the next RV mistake, speaking of water, where you connect your water to your RV. This happens to be the system on the Momentum, and it's adding this right angle connector right here. Without this, your hose would be going this direction, and what it does is it puts unnecessary pressure on this plastic piece right here, and this can become damaged. With this right angle connector, it hangs down naturally. That protects this plastic piece right here, and this is pretty common on most RVs. And our next section is talking about the dreaded sewer, the black and the gray tank stuff. So it's not that big a deal. You just want to make sure you have the right stuff and you don't make these mistakes. Number one, you need to have the disposable blue gloves. And after each use, you want to throw these away. So box of blue gloves, you can find those on Amazon as well. So next mistake is not having a separate container for all of your hoses like this. And it just helps keep all of the nastiness of the gray and black water away from everything else in your RV. If you don't have room for something like this, you can use these on the ends, just little caps that go on the ends of your sewer hose. Also, make sure, and this is another mistake, that you have lots of extra hose like this, because these do spring leaks all the time. They're not going to last forever, so have extra hoses with you. And the next RV mistake around sewer is not supporting your hose. This is a pretty common one right here, and that's what a lot of people do, but I'm going to actually show you another way to support it and keep it off the ground. Another way to support your sewer hose is to use a large PVC pipe like this, just cut in half, and like a rock or something to provide that gentle slope coming down from your RV connection like this. So this is a little hack you can use if you don't want to go the other route. The next RV sewer mistake is leaving the black tank right here, the black tank release. This is where it is on the momentum, but leaving that open. Our gray tank is open right now. The black tank is closed. You can see it's pushed in there. If you leave your black tank open, then your toilet paper won't get a chance to dissolve, and the solids and things like that won't get a chance to dissolve. So you need to leave that closed. Definitely do not leave that open until you're ready to dump. For those of you that think I should have my gray tank closed right now, we do that before we're gonna flush the black tank and let a little bit of gray water accumulate in there, and then it helps wash everything down. The next RV mistake is not using proper toilet paper. We use Scott toilet paper. The important thing is whatever toilet paper you use, it has to be able to break down rather quickly in the water so it all flushes out. And a bonus RV mistake that I just did that we didn't catch on camera is hitting your head on the slides right here. So I've had this happen, I don't know, that's probably the most repeated RV mistake that I've done, hitting my head on these. What's the solution for these is you can get those cheap pool noodles that kids play with. You can cut into them and you can stick them on here. We prefer not to do it that way, but we just try to remember not to hit our head on this. Now the next mistake is overfilling your black and gray tanks in your RV. It's a pretty common thing for the readout to not be very accurate. This shows our black tanks both at 100% capacity. They are not. So we recommend dumping earlier rather than later. Your black tank will burp or spit at you if it gets too full, and if you're seated, it'll be an unpleasant experience. And the next mistake is not leaving your gray tank open when you're doing clothes washing. I forgot to mention this mistake in our biggest RV mistakes videos, but one time in our old rig, I was washing clothes and the gray tank was closed and it was too full. Not a good combination. What happened? Well, the gray tank burst and fell through into the underbelly of the RV. The washer and dryer was inside the bedroom at the time and water got everywhere on the inside. Huge repair bill on that one. So if you're doing laundry, make sure the gray tank is open. So many campgrounds do not have a sewer connection, so the next RV mistake is not having a blue tote with you. Now this technically is probably an optional item. We think it's a mistake because if you fill up your black tank and gray tanks and you need to go dump in the middle of your trip, it's kind of a pain. It can take hours to do that, so having a blue tote along takes a lot of that away. And we will link to the one that we use in our Amazon page. And the biggest RV setup mistake is thinking that you can't handle all of this. whatever you do, if you really want to get out there and enjoy a trip in an RV, you can handle it. And now that you've seen all of these mistakes, you can't repeat them. There's a saying that says, always make new mistakes. So get out there and enjoy yourself. Cheers. How many of these RV setup mistakes have you made? Let us know in the comments. And if there's any RV setup mistakes that we didn't list, let us know as well. This video can become a learning resource for others. Be sure to share the video with your RV friends. We will be making more RV mistake videos like this covering different areas. So be sure to subscribe, ring that little bell. That way you'll be notified when we release those new videos. And if you want to get a free copy of our RV setup and teardown checklists, you can sign up for our newsletter. That link is down in the description, as well as our link to our Amazon store where you can find most of the items that we talked about in the video today. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and happy camping. Here, hold my beer. You getting me into a jungle in here? It's a freaking jungle out here.
At least it's a tropical jungle.
Yeah.
Do you need help?
CHERI'S hammock that I don't hardly ever get into.
Don't put your shoes in there. Oh my gosh. Kick those things off. Dirty at my hammock.
This is relaxing.
Well, your head is higher up here.
And I did get to borrow them one when they were actually doing their shakedown trip.
You got to lend them one. You didn't borrow them one.
So we were able to borrow them one and they were able to get through the weekend. Oh,
where is that coming from? Borrow them one.
I don't know. It just seems natural.
I've never heard that before.
You sure it's not proper?
It's not proper. You can lend somebody something, or I lent.
That's probably not that big a deal.
It is.
The lizard's like scolding you.
Where?
He's right there on the fence. He like ran over and then looked at you and like did his head.